Before we get into the meat on the bone of this breakdown, push your nostalgia down, way down inside, because whatever you thought Final Fantasy VII was before, you need to accept that the remake is comprehensively not that game. Square Enix's much anticipated remake of an all-time classic is stuck between reflecting the expectations of the modern player and fulfilling the wishlists of millions who fell in love with the original Final Fantasy VII. There's no way the game can successfully balance these demands, and in trying to, it compromises itself on both counts. This is neither a title gloriously evocative of the 1997 adventure, and nor does it entirely hold up to the standards set by 21st century RPGs. Final Fantasy VII Remake's core story beats are certainly reflective of the game it's based on. You play as Cloud Strife, a soldier with a sword bigger than his mood swings, and you meet up with your childhood friend Tifa in the slums beneath the saucer-shaped elevated city of Midgar, the primary setting for this first part of however many remake chapters. You're subsequently introduced to Barret, the leader of the eco-warrior protest-cum-terrorist group Avalanche, and Aerith, a flower seller with a mysterious past and incredible untapped potential. Your enemies are, first and foremost, Shinra, a company draining the planet of its energy, its Mako, for profit. Of course, it's not quite as black and white as all that, but the basics are as they were over 2 decades ago. As for what's changed, well, that's pretty much everything else. The turn-based combat you knew is now a free-flowing, fast-paced mix of real-time sword blows and bullet blasts, paired with menu-driven abilities, magic, and item use. You've the option to set the combat to a classic mode, but it's honestly hard to go back to all that waiting around. And the battles can be spectacular. Bosses filled the screen sometimes several times over. Characters constantly chatter throughout these encounters, motivating each other towards victory. And when the winning fanfare finally plays, because it doesn't every time, it's the greatest reward. Despite some pre-release uncertainty on Remake's combat, in practice, it's one of the game's greatest strengths. Another are the visuals and the audio. You'll want to play with headphones on to fully appreciate the rearrangements of beloved orchestral arrangements, some of which are subtle and elegant, others striking in their boldness. And graphically, Remake frequently astounds. Being able to look up from the slums of Sector 7 and 5 to the upper levels of Midgar is amazing, and key locations in the game like Aerith's house and surrounding gardens and the dazzling neon-soaked delights of Wall Market look like they've been plucked straight from the imagination of long-term fans. Not every inhabitant is given the same care and attention though. The effort put into the main cast is made all the more obvious when you're talking to an NPC who looks like they've just rolled straight from a PS3 title, with dull textures and facial animation that's awkward enough to be embarrassing, frankly.
Cloud, you've exceeded my expectations.
Numerous other small gripes appear the more you play. Cloud will interact with doors and switches, NPCs and more, including the newly introduced benches, used to restore HP and MP, by using the triangle button. But sometimes it only needs a tap, and other times needs to be held, without any obvious distinction as to why. What this game definitely doesn't share with the likes of Zelda Breath of the Wild, Horizon Zero Dawn, or Skyrim is a real sense of openness. Final Fantasy XIII was widely criticised on its 2009 launch for being a near-endless slog through snaking corridors, and Final Fantasy VII Remake follows the same painfully straightforward path, funneling you towards objectives with only sporadic breaks for populated hubs that only really stretch out when you reach Wall Market. Remake makes a lot more of Final Fantasy VII's supporting cast, namely the Avalanche members Biggs, Jessie and Wedge. Each is given their time to shine, but it's Jessie more than the others who dominates screen time, and when she does, it's often to flirt outrageously with Cloud. In Jessie's case, her fluttering eyelashes are loaded with ulterior motives, but Tifa and Aerith both seem keen on the confused lad, and the game doesn't shy away from cheesing up its dialogue as a result.
My hero.
Square Enix have been very clear that Remake is part of a series of releases that will add up to the full package, but they've also said that this first entry will fit the time that it took to beat the original Final Fantasy VII, which was anywhere between 50 and 80 hours. Now, we're yet to do everything in Remake, as there is a selection of post-game content to enjoy, but the main campaign certainly doesn't take anywhere near 50 hours to beat, even with a number of side missions completed. Side missions which vary from patience-testing fetch quest filler to genuinely delightful showdowns with a trio of comedy thugs. By aiming to please newcomers alongside its millions of existing fans, and padding out its runtime with too many inconsequential side quests, Final Fantasy VII Remake falls way short of the classic status in a 21st century context. If you love these characters in these locations, this music and materia, you're in for a fine time. But if you've been raised on a diet of the very best role players of the past 10 years or so, Remake may struggle to hold your attention as it streamlines itself into a tunnel vision state of failing to see the bigger picture of what could have been. Fingers, toes and chocobos crossed then that part 2 sees the promise of this Remake project fully blossom.